A common mistake that people make when trying to design something completely foolproof is to underestimate the ingenuity of complete fools. Douglas Adams.
Bending, Not Breaking. Season 6, Episode 10. Long Live the Queen. And we're back with another episode of Bending, Not Breaking. I'm Sunshine.
And I'm Ben.
And I'm so excited to be here today. Just so excited.
Yeah.
Yeah, I ran straight to the studio today, and I am breathless. Like, I had to catch my breath.
Breathless,
Yeah,
huh?
Yep. Catching my breath now, jumping in. But that's how excited I was.
Can you read the title card again? Like, just do it right now.
Yes. Long Live the Queen.
Or not.
Or
I almost interjected that earlier, but I decided not to.
only kind of.
Or not.
What does it say when an entire fandom was like, yeah,
Right?
good for that?
Yeah.
It's
It's pretty rare that someone's like, no, that was not good.
Yeah, everyone's like, yeah.
It's like,
Collectively, the fandom's like, I'm not down with murder, but like, eh.
yeah. It's like, ooh, okay. Well, yeehaw. Here we are.
We are. Well, it was a pretty ingenious move. I don't know if it's a good one, but it was clever.
Killing the queen?
The way which it happened.
Okay, yeah, okay. I can get behind that. Interesting word choice. You picked ingenious there in that phrasing. Why?
Our lens is ingenuity.
Oh.
That's our lens.
I knew that.
Ingenuity. The quality of being clever, original, or inventive.
Interesting.
Which is very broad, and I like that because one of the things that I think what happens a lot is people are like, innovation, new, I've got to invent something from scratch. And I really love the concept of taking past knowledge and being like, we don't have to do things completely new. Like,
that's
we
ingenious.
We can just tweak this thing that didn't work for us and now it does. And
Absolutely.
And so I like that the cleverness is in there, and we see a lot of that. We see a lot of like not reinventing the wheel, but finding ways to make different wheels work.
And how to use existing tools in new ways also. Like the whole progression of bending over the history of this world is fascinating. Like,
water bending.
The different forms of water bending.
Water bending in the vine.
Yeah.
Water bending
and how that might have
in blood.
Yeah, might have led to the same concept with people.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's just, this is another example where like
I've never seen airbending used that way before.
Well, we haven't, but perhaps it's been used by rogue airbenders in the past.
Do you view that as like almost as like one of the unforgivable curses type deal? It's like maybe they knew it was a thing, but it's just so like, you don't do that.
I think that we've only seen Aang at his 12-year-old self in avatar form. I wonder if there are airbenders avatars in the past. And if we have any understanding of any of those people, that if we could learn more, kind of like in a book.
Yeah. Do they have books?
Yeah.
Are there books?
Yeah. I can think of, 3.
At least 3.
Yeah.
I still haven't read Yang Chen yet.
It's good.
Better than...
Funny you mention that one.
Better than the...
Airbending avatar.
Right. Well, better than the other 2.
I would say they're all...
Kyoshi novels?
They're all equal. The first Kyoshi novel is my favorite.
Okay.
I would say...
Yeah, I liked it.
I'd say the second Kyoshi novel is very good. Like, I give it a, 4.5 out of 5.
Oh, so you really like the first one, then.
I think it's very good. Like, I've read it several times. I listened to it on audiobook. And I think it's very good. And then, Dawn of Yang Chen, I need to read again before I make any determining factors, judgments. But it's good. I learned some things.
Well, let's jump into this episode. Do we feel like ingenuity? Do we feel like we've got it? Do we know what that is?
I feel like...
Or what else you want to add?
It's a pretty commonly used word. So connotatively,
but
I think people
we haven't
got it.
used it.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, I think the closest we got to this was like what? Creativity in season 1 of the podcast.
Maybe, yeah.
So yeah. Well, here we are. We've got our stage. Now we just need our players, and to get us to that point, we need you to give us the recap.
All right, you got 30 seconds on the clock, so I'm about to go.
I sure do. On your mark, it said go.
Korra and Asami are thrown into a cell on the ship, and they warn the captain about the attack on the queen, but he doesn't believe him. Mako and Bolin are also captured and talk to their little capturers and find out things about their life, which is fun. The Earth Queen is approached by the Red Lotus to strike a deal about finding the airbenders and getting the Avatar. Mako and Bolin gets into the dungeon. Korra breaks free and tries to take over the airship, but they crash. They have to fix it. It's a whole thing. Escape from a sand shark. It's a lot. Lin follows tracks, and Naga and Pabu jump out and scare her, and that's fun. The ship gets fixed. They fund. Zahir kills the Earth Queen, dead, frees everyone in Ba Sing Se and Mako and Bolin, and Korra and Asami find everyone. And then find out about the death of the Earth Queen.
It's a lot going on. Not much fighting.
This is a longer it feels longer.
Yeah, not much fighting to nullify that 10-second gap in the recap for sure. Yeah. Well, we did it. All right. Well, that's the end of our episode.
You make that joke all the time, and all the time I call you out, and you go, "Do I make that joke a lot?" And I'm here to say, no, you do make that joke a lot. This is
the second time I've made that joke.
That's not even close to being true.
Yeah, I think it's true.
You're a liar.
Anyway, Ingenuity. In Long Live the Queen.
Yes.
Book 3, Episode 10 of The Legend of Korra.
Early on, one of the smart moves we see that sets up the success of the entirety of the show. Hey, don't chain me to the floor. Chain me to the wall.
Asami. Can we just talk about how Asami is like the best in every episode that she's in?
She's great.
Like,
I don't have a bad thing to say about Asami.
Like, very rarely am I like, Asami.
She might be getting gratitude today. Who knows? But what a smart move. And, honestly, if you don't know much and you don't think of the difference, you're like, what's the difference between railing on the floor?
Right?
And you're like, well, yeah, I would probably prefer to stand and be strapped to my knees either. So, yeah, we'll let you stand. I guess it doesn't really matter.
Well, and it's interesting,
She's like, great, boom. And then, she does have to hop to get the bar out from her.
Well, it's important, I think, to acknowledge what that required of Asami, too, is,
just forethought.
She's also a businesswoman, right? With a keen acumen of business acumen. And what that looks like is knowing what your competitors are doing and how they're functioning and what's their process, right? And if you know their process, then you can, commit to either doing it differently or doing it better if you know how. And so she's very familiar with Cabbage Corp's materials and their methods. And she's like, I can use that.
One of the weirdest things that it seems super simple that we don't typically do is say, hey, someone else is doing this really well.
How do we learn from that?
We should do that, right?
Yeah.
And if we can do it better, then great, we'll add to it. And so I think that's exactly, maybe Cabbage Corp did the exact opposite, right? Which I feel like we see that a lot, right? Here's something that someone does really well.
Can we do it cheaper?
Can I do it cheaper and make it look the same, regardless of its functionality?
Correct.
Every time I watch HD TV and see someone flipping a home, I'm like, no, you just ripped out hardwood so you could put down some weird fake wood that's
fake carpet,
real cheap.
Yeah.
Or those sliding barn door closets that you can buy a kit for. That anytime, if you're ever looking at houses, and I'm doing this a lot because I'm looking to buy a house. Every time, within one of the first 2 pictures, if I see one of those white sliding barn doors that's on a closet, I go, it's a flip. And I immediately look down and see that it was purchased 3 months ago for $80,000.
I like the sliding barn doors that aren't white. I like the really
They can
old...
be great, but what happens is they have now become a staple that you can put together for $70. And so every house flipper puts it on every closet.
It's trendy right now.
And it's just one of those things everything's white. And then they put weird gray wooden, but it's not real wood flooring down. And every time I go,
I don't want that.
It's a flip.
I want wood floor.
And so it seems like Cabbage Corp tried to flip some airships.
Well, and
Asami knew.
Well, and they're profiting. They probably got all the purchases from the Earth Queen, right? I imagine that we're going to take the cheaper option. And if you don't, I'm a big fan, and I don't want to sustain capitalism in any way because Down with capitalism.
Capitalism really popped off this time.
I think you get what you pay for. And I think
in a lot of situations, I think that's true.
Right? And so depending on what you're going for, if you are choosing to buy a generic brand that is mass produced, it is likely going to be inferior to well,
and that's why people say that it's
niche brand.
It says it's expensive to be poor.
Exactly.
Right?
It is.
And that's precisely why. If you can't buy the more expensive kitchenware or the more expensive shoes is a great example.
Shoes is a great example.
Like if you can afford a $200 pair of shoes,
they'll likely last
5 years. The moment you buy the $50 ones or the $70 ones because that's what you can afford, those wear out in 3 months. And so you end up spending $700 in 5 years because you didn't have that money short term.
It's also a matter of the number of pairs of shoes you have that you can switch between.
Correct.
Right? So if I have, 10 $100 pairs of shoes, then they're never going to wear out.
Because you wear them once every 10 days,
I'm wearing
arguably.
this one, and then I'm wearing this one, and then I'm wearing... If you're alternating and using them all sparingly, then they're all going to last 10 years, right? Because you're only wearing them 10th of the time.
But if you only got the same pair of shoes
But if it's your only pair of shoes, it's going to run out within a year. Easy. And that's for a decent pair of shoes. So
again, you end up spending more than the person who buys 10 pairs of shoes up front.
Yes.
Because you're having to spend that money more frequently.
Every couple of months.
So as we get to it, Asami being able to think and understand and have knowledge, and I think that's one of the other things that I want to lift up when it comes to ingenuity and cleverness and creativity is that it's a practice thing. It's a learned thing, right? It's not just innately gets lifted as like, you're creative or you're not, or you're clever or you're not.
Yeah.
And the reality is you can practice and learn these things. If Asami didn't have the knowledge and the learnings, there would be no cleverness.
It's the same thing with intelligence. A lot of people think intelligence is static, right? You either have it or you don't. But intelligence is learned also, right? The more you learn, the more you know, the more you can do.
Yep.
Right? So intelligence in and of itself is not static. You can grow in your intelligence, you can not. And so I think that when we say you're a really smart kid to someone who's really intelligent, they're going to act differently than someone who you say, hey, you're a dummy.
Yeah.
Right? Not only because of the shame that's involved in that spot, but also what I'm hearing, the language that you're using to describe me is internalized. And if I think it's static, then that's going to be the way that I am.
Yeah. And so whether it was the Sand Sailor is a perfect example of that. Had they not known the history or known the context of, hey, sandbenders use something similar, we can do the same thing but with air and a sail.
Ingenious.
Let's build it.
Right?
That is but you have to have, that was lifted up by the prior knowledge that was there.
Exactly.
And so a lot of times thinking of
it's a great example.
This is an amazing idea. How'd you think of it? It's like, well, I had prior knowledge and prior experience that helped me get to that point. Most inventions don't come out of
literally nothing.
Literally nothing. It can't, even when you think about Listerine, I believe was initially meant to be like a household cleaner or something along those lines. And then they're like, oh, this actually cleans your mouth.
And I think what's really fascinating about that is I'm gonna do a short blurb for our live episodes. We had our live episode today that we recorded with our patrons, and we talked about the connectedness of everything because we were talking about Avatar: The Last Airbender, Season 2, Episode 4, The Swamp.
That's right.
And connectedness was one of the themes we talked about. And the connectedness is true in this ingenuity, right? Being able to connect the dots between seemingly unconnected things is ingenious. And so if you know more things, if you are aware of more things, you are more likely to be considered ingenious because you're going to be able to connect those dots.
Absolutely.
So yeah, let's cultivate some awareness around more things, and we're going to be winning.
Yeah.
It's like the point of our podcast.
Just keep learning. And then you'll have the ability to learn more and then do more.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's hard to separate Asami's ingenuity in this episode without being connected to Korra's support.
Right. Like the sandbender doesn't work if Korra doesn't have the skill.
Yeah.
of airbending.
Well, and not just literal support, but also her language. She is so supportive of Asami.
This entire episode.
This whole episode is like 100% believes that Asami will figure out a way to do this, and is like, as soon as she says something, Korra's like, I'm here for it, let's do it. And people don't always get that kind of support, right? People are like, hey, what if we did this? They're like, nah, I don't think that's a great idea. That's a terrible idea. We should do this instead, right? How often do we experience that?
One of the best things that I've learned to do in my career is when people have an idea that they're passionate about, I can share, hey, I've tried something similar, right? But that doesn't mean we say no, right? We look to find the yes. If this is something you would like to do, and we can try it, let's try it.
Yeah.
Right? Like, why not?
Yep.
Certainly there's always risk mitigation, but majority of the time we have the ability to take the risk.
Here.
And so we say, yeah, sure. That's not something I'm passionate about, but if it's something you're passionate about,
I want to keep your fire
let's
going.
Do
let's
it.
keep it going.
Yeah,
right?
let's do it.
Waft those flames.
And there are moments where it's like, we can't get this ship out of the sand. And Korra's like, well, let me try.
Yeah.
And then she does.
Well, I mean, they underestimate the ability of an
the avatar,
right? So, yeah, I think that it's really lovely to have someone who is supportive
of those innovative ideas when they come around.
Right? I think that's really huge.
How many innovative, and most of the innovative ideas that we think of, the light bulb, how many iterations of that took place?
Lots of failures.
Prior, exactly. And so, there's always going to be, let's try it. No, that didn't work. Well, what didn't work about it? Well, let's keep trying.
What would make it work next time?
Right?
Right. Small steps to change.
Small steps to change.
I love it.
What's a moment for you that either had or didn't have ingenuity?
Well, it's just sticking with this side of the things. One of the
side of the story.
Yeah, one of the things that comes to mind that is really, it's a small thing, but this straitjacket that they've come up with to like prevent bending from Korra is terrifying.
Yeah,
because it's very effective.
Super effective.
It does everything, and it looks like Hannibal Lecter, but like it's like hands are tied, wrapped in this thing, can't do anything. There's no way to pull a dragon's breath like Iroh does in Avatar: The Last Airbender, because the mouth is covered. Like everything has kind of been.
It's almost like they
here.
should have consulted the Earth Kingdom when they put the Red Lotus in prison,
right? Like it's interesting, but like I don't know I don't know what's better. Right? Would you rather be, in the depths of a volcano, or would you rather be in a straitjacket?
Or both? That's what I'm saying.
Well, that'd be even worse, right? And so it's.
And I mean, how long are you in that straitjacket for, too?
All the things are terrifying
right.
about this, but it is ingenious, right? It is a use of. It is clever. It is terrifying.
I wonder if it's also terrifying based off of our association with Hannibal Lecter and Silence of the Lambs and.
I don't think I'd be terrified of Korra. Well, I guess
Just
I would. Like, if I came up upon this random person that's in a straitjacket, I'd probably be pretty scared.
Have you ever seen the movie The New Guy with DJ Quayles that came out in, 2003?
No, I haven't.
He gets dropped off at a new school, and to be cool, they drop him off out of a van in a straitjacket with the mask on.
That makes him cool, huh?
To make him cool. And it just made me think of that because that movie is not good.
Yeah.
But also,
sounds like it.
was in, 7th grade when it came out, so.
So you were like, that would be cool.
It's not a good movie.
Yeah.
But that's what it made me think of. So yeah, people who, they don't know you.
Yeah.
Could be scared.
Anyway, that's a small thing that I thought was ingenious. But.
Well, I also like we just airbended all the sand out of the engine room.
Yep.
Never been cleaner.
Never been cleaner.
Yeah, I guess.
Oh, turns out airbenders useful.
However, I've leaf blown sand before, and it's not as effective as you might think it is.
Well, I think when you have more control than just one directional, blowing.
Maybe, if you can just take an entire space and
because
it just gets kicked back up. It's a whole thing.
Yeah, I think Korra has a little bit more control than a leaf
blower.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I guess that straitjacket wouldn't have worked on Boomy, who can earthbend with his nose or his little
nose was covered.
He blinks, man.
All of
yeah,
it. It was I don't know. Anyway, we digress.
He didn't cover my nose.
Yeah. So the other side, one of the things I thought was ingenious too, keeping with confinement train, is Gazan and Minghua talking about their experience in the cells.
I really like that moment.
It's a pretty humanizing moment, right?
Well, and I think we've in the Red Lotus have always been ones where we're like, oh, we kind of get it, right? Like we get what they're going for. Similar as to
methods, maybe not.
Methods,
goal,
maybe not. But
maybe.
the goal, like,
lot of
not
the goals.
killing the Avatar, but like.
Or maybe.
But I really like that moment where Bolin's just like, let me guess, and then does all the things. He's like, hey, 2 out of 3, not bad.
And I'm also very interested in which two are true.
Clearly, the unspoken love is there.
What do you mean clearly?
It's clearly there. They both,
I mean, that's
they
what
both
I
blush.
want to be true, but
I assume the mustache at age 10 is also like.
I think that's true.
It's
Yeah,
probably true.
Yeah. So not raised by his sister.
Nah, maybe.
Who knows?
Or maybe it's all 3, but he said 2 out of 3 to keep it unspoken.
Yeah. Ooh, theories.
Yeah.
If you have a theory, we'd love to hear about it on Twitter.
It's like Guardians of the Galaxy, where it's like
Instagram.
you can't say the thing, or else it becomes spoken. So for it to stay unspoken, you can't acknowledge it.
Or any of the other social media sites. BNB_pod. Come and find us. Yeah. So I thought that was really interesting, really humane. And I thought it was pretty ingenious how they kept from being bored by, okay, I counted the constellation about 37,000 times.
Yeah.
And it was an event when it was raining. And I made up stories about the guards. And it's just interesting to me to think about what I would do if I were confined for 13 years.
Yeah. Lots of push-ups, maybe?
I think that yes.
Like,
right? I don't know. I also wonder, because my tendency when I do have the time to myself now is to like lay on the couch and do nothing. But
yeah,
I think
but if you had nothing, because you've done things.
I think it's because I'm so exhausted
Yeah.
from being overstimulated for so long that it's like this is all I can do to function. And so
Right.
I think that I think that's what I would resort to doing is like, hey, I'm gonna count how many push-ups I can do in a day, how many it's like things like that. Just assuming I'm getting fed enough to merit that kind of activity.
Yeah.
Like there's a
What
lot
if
of
they
factors
only feed
there.
you enough to just like
Yeah.
stay alive, which would be terrible,
It would be
miserable.
Yeah, super bad. All right, moment of ingenuity for you.
A lack of one would be
interesting.
Mako just continuously telling Bolin
Bolin,
over. No,
metal bend.
you can totally metal bend. Like,
You cannot solve an ability issue with motivation.
correct. I think that is a very important thing to lift up.
Right? You cannot solve an ability issue with more motivation, right? If you can't do something, you can't do it even if you say,
I really
you
want to
can
do it.
Yeah. So, and I think oftentimes we attribute failure
to lack of motivation.
Correct, right? They're lazy. They don't want it enough. When really, it's an ability. They can't do it for some reason. And for some reason, I don't know I don't know all the things behind all the bending things, but Bolin has this innate desire he's wanted to metal bend for years. What do you think you can metal bend in this really pivotal moment is going to do after 13 years of wanting to be able to metal bend? I'm making 13 up a long time. But I think that
13 was for the prison.
Oh, yeah. That's why the number's there.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, a nice connection. Everything's connected.
Yep.
Anyway, I think with that, it's impossible for us to like it's hubris. What makes you think that your motivational 5 words is going to be more motivational than the innate desire that this person has carried for their entire lives?
And what you start to notice is I think there's a couple reasons we lean into motivation is because it allows us to affirm our crappy first draft majority of the time, right? Like it doesn't make us have to challenge our stories when we believe it's a motivational issue or that it's an ability issue, because an ability issue means like, oh, maybe I didn't do enough to
maybe
support.
I'm the one in the wrong,
Oh,
right?
yeah, right. And so an example of this right now is the student loan conversation, right? Some people are upset, some people are not.
We can't let that happen.
And one of the things that I've noticed is when you hear people talk about, well, I did the right thing, and I paid them off on time.
Oh, okay.
Right? Like, which is clearly you are making the assertion that people are bad for taking out student loans. That was the wrong. We did the right thing. I saved up and paid for college without loans. So now I'm being punished. It's like you didn't do. It's not a right thing. You took a different path.
Yeah.
To get to the same goal. Neither one of those is right or wrong, but to acknowledge the fact that a lot of people are actively trying to pay off student loans and can't because it is an ability issue, not a motivation issue. Like I pay off my payment every month.
Yep.
The problem is
predatory lenders.
Student loan companies up the interest rate so that you can't actually get out of the hole you're trying to get out of. And so this understanding of ability versus motivation and not demonize and like being willing to demonize motivation as the issue.
Yep.
Right. And so I think that's part of what we see when we see that type of language and things used as well.
I just love how, you're so good at tying in like current events. I love it.
I try, but and I think that's one of the,
it's an ingenious teaching style.
If we saw that in Mako, and I don't think we see this aspect of it, but it would be very easy for him to be like, you are just not trying hard enough. Like, how dare you let us stay here in this because you're not doing enough.
The problem is it's implied.
Right.
Because if Mako truly believes that Bolin has the capacity and has tried motivating him and doesn't see it as an ability issue, then that message is implied.
It will eventually lead to resentment.
If he doesn't already.
Right.
Right? I think it's that shows in the second time he comes back and says, Bolin, now's the time. And it's no wonder that they have a really interesting, rough relationship all through this series if this is the thought process that's going on. And that's not to say that Mako isn't using a form of ingenuity here. He's not solely relying on, he's firebending. He's trying to melt the bars.
Something. But that's the other side of it, is if you are so reliant into not changing your ways that you are missing opportunities or even time and energy that could be spent finding all the ways that could work or could be better, right?
Yeah.
I think that's part of that as well.
Yeah. I hear that.
It's not going to work.
It's not.
So we're not going to try. Or we can, if it's, which is one of my favorite things, because if Korra easily could have told Asami, we can't make a sand sailor. It's not going to work. Well, we don't have anything better to do. We're like, the situation isn't going to get worse by us trying to build the sand sailor. And let's see how it pans out.
Worst case scenario is we get eaten by a sandfish.
So, like, it's either do something
or get eaten.
Because right now we're going to get eaten. So the other option is do something and try to not get eaten.
Yeah.
And I think we very often know that's not going to work. Well, then let's try something that could work. Or let's try this. If it's the only other option we've got, let's try it. And if it doesn't work, then we're in the same spot.
Then we will have been in a better place than where we would have mentally.
Correct.
Right?
And so I think that's part of it as well.
Yeah.
So how many other ways could they have found out of that dungeon? They are also both earthbenders, or like there is an earthbending, and so there's probably smart enough in the earth, like in Bossing, say that like if you're an earthbender, you can't get out of the cell, right? Like there's probably something like that.
Yeah,
but
one would think, or they have different cells for earthbenders.
Yeah, but we didn't see any of that like being tried to happen, right?
Nobody was like trying to take down the wall, right? We assume
or go
like
tunnel under or do anything
some
like
sort
that,
of
right?
titanium or platinum.
We're assuming.
Yeah. Either that or there was a severe lack of ingenuity. That's all I'm saying.
Well, because when Mako's burning, I'm like, you're burning down a part of the cell that holds no structural, like, integrity point of the, like, you...
I think you only need
Why would you do it? Why would you not do it to the locking mechanism?
Which seems a lot smarter, right? If you just knock out the two locking mechanisms, all of a sudden you can just get out.
As opposed to the one bar that you can't squeeze out of anyways.
But how often do we think that way, though, right? If we're not taking in the bigger picture, if you don't have the understanding of a way a door works, and, like, let's be real, a lot of people use doors all the time, but they don't think about how a door works and how it's staying up and how, like, oh, that requires multiple screws. It requires this kind of hinge. Like, no one's thinking about the engineering behind why a door works.
Because landlords paint over all of it, so you can't. We don't know.
But, like, typical everyday me going around, I'm not thinking about, oh, this door hinges on these 3 hinges and I need to be able to access it here to be able to hang the door, right? The only time I really thought about that was like when I had to replace a door and I was like, okay, let me really think about this. But people don't think about that on a regular spot.
Yeah.
And especially if you're in I'm imprisoned, I'm terrified, what do? I have to get out.
But Mako has put people in prison before.
Again, I don't think he's thinking about that.
That's what I'm saying. Like, you would think that, like, here's how you get out of the cell. Here are probably the 3 easiest ways to get out of the cell. You would think that would be a part of his learning.
One would think. However, oftentimes, the quote kind of pointed to this. Like, we often underestimate the, quote, fools, when in reality they're the ones that we should be leaning into for the most important information that we can get, right? And so I don't know that Mako's considering that. Anyway, moral of the story is ingenuity. Neat. What's a moment of ingenuity for you?
Neat.
Or do you have more? What's going on here?
Again, not that I agree with the methods, but the thought process of, like, you want airbenders and I want the Avatar, and here's why this is a win-win for both
trade.
of us. It's clever. Well, it's a clever play, and granted, I never truly believed that the Earth Queen was going to give up the Avatar.
I don't know. I felt like Zahir made an impression when he said all of the other nations would be against you, and I think she thinks in those terms.
Maybe.
Or thought in those terms.
There's a part of me that this, like, I'm above you type deal, and so I'm really not. I'm not gonna
use your information.
Yeah, I'm gonna get my airbenders back, and then I can fight the other nations.
Well, it's also interesting. Then why does Zahir even attempt this when, like, he kills her in the end anyway? Right? Because I don't think he intended to do that.
I think that was no, I don't think so either. I think that is the flexibility that they're like, well, if the Avatar's not going to be here and the Avatar's not in her care anyways, then
well, she's kind of the
might
worst,
as well do a revolution. When I think, because I think he even says it, right? Like, let's make the Avatar come to us.
He does.
And so I think that became I
think that's ingenious.
I'm good. Well, we're going to start taking out world leaders then, because that means I'm not going to have to chase the Avatar anymore. They're going to come and find me.
Yeah, well, I think the immediate thought there is, well, I know where the airbenders are, so I'm going to go get them and hold them hostage, right? And it's just interesting that I think this is a move that says, hey, I'm serious.
Yeah. You ripping the air out of someone's lungs? Yeah, pretty determined at that time.
Yeah.
But I do think he's clever, and I think him escaping out of the room to eavesdrop is clever, and which begs back to the question that we've had all season: is how did he get so good at all of this stuff? Because as we talk about knowledge base being a supporter of ingenuity, where's his knowledge base coming from?
Yeah. Question. I have that live question. Last thing for me is the old fogies at the end getting together. So that's Tone Rock and Lin and Zuko.
What a moment.
There's some ingenuity in leaning on each other, right? And like that is a clever use of resources.
Always, right? Greater than the sum of our parts.
And I think that to not call it that is a disservice, right? Because I think oftentimes, everybody, if I hadn't said that, they would be like, oh, that's totally, ingenuity, cool. But I think sometimes we have to name it if we want to keep that as within our mind and within our understanding and awareness, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
I think anytime we learn, like, there are certain things where you sit there and be like, oh, I'm not very creative, I'm not very innovative. Every time I get, like, my organization consistently puts out things where they're like, innovation challenge, and who's got the best idea? And I never have an idea that I think is worthy of that, right? That is not necessarily my skill set, is to think of new things. But my skill set is to learn from the things that I've done and share that with others and help people grow that way, right? So you clean your house one way and you find out it's really difficult to get the dust off of your ceiling fan blades. And then at one point you're like, if only I had a thing that could capture that dust so it doesn't fall over everything.
Yep.
Pillowcase. Oh! I could wrap a pillowcase around my ceiling fan blades, and that gets the dust off. Cool, right? Like, that's not that earth-shattering, and it works.
Sure.
Congrats, ingenuity, right? Like,
yeah. Well, and I think part of what's I worry about ingenuity, innovation challenges, because who's determining what's innovative?
Correct.
And when what is innovative is what is money making in certain instances.
Yes.
Right? It's a capitalist driven, is this going to maintain the power of whatever X, Y, and Z is? And so I worry about it from that standpoint in the sense of somebody might have this beautifully ingenious idea that is going to serve a lot of people that need help. But if it doesn't make money, or if it doesn't do X, Y, and Z to make people in power feel good, then it's not going to win.
Yeah, you're talking about renewable energy.
Sure, exactly, right? Like, precisely.
There is no reason that every new build, every new home doesn't have
geothermal,
doesn't have solar panel on it, right?
Or
like
whatever,
something.
right?
Yep. And yet,
wind power.
New houses are being built that don't have those things that are required on the energy grid.
Because Duke Energy's the worst.
For us.
North Carolina.
Correct.
Hello. I'm calling you out. Pay us money for sponsorship.
Oh, they will. That's how they get good PR.
Can we say whatever we want for the ad?
No, we can't. We'll give scholarships to so many people.
Anyway.
And then keep people from getting solar panels.
Anything else about ingenuity in this episode?
No, I think one of the things that maybe not so much ingenuity, but this concept of, and I think you mentioned thereof, is this idea of people are tough to hate close up. I think that's an important part to lift up, and a lot of this ingenuity took place because of like the support from everyone on that airship, who had to buy into their own safety and buy into maybe these people aren't so bad type understanding, to make sure that they could get things done.
I think we were talking about that before we started recording, but this idea that people are hard to hate close up.
Yeah.
Move in. So we're being charged to move in, and that's one of the 4 tenets of Brene Brown's Braving the Wilderness.
Ooh.
But people are hard to hate close up. Once you get to know them, you start to appreciate them, and like, okay, let's do something. And I think the move from these jailers that have Asami and Korra from nope, you're our prisoners to hey, we're gonna part ways as comrades and that have been working together is really beautiful transition.
Let's also acknowledge that takes safety, right?
Korra is in charge at this point, right?
There's no leaning into abusers, right? You know what I mean? So I think that's an important caveat to throw on there. But typically you're right?
Yeah. Yes. Well, and it's interesting because it's the same thing, I think, with Kazan and Minghua and Bolin and Mako, right? They're buddying up and getting closer to one another, and it becomes harder. And Mako's like, what are you doing? And
Can you stop making friends with the criminals, please?
And I'm like, or they could start to see us differently, and maybe that would lean into saying change. I don't think it would have in this case, but
no.
I do think that for viewers in that moment, we're like, oh, Kazan and Minghua, kind of funny. Kind of like they're a little bit more human, right? That humanizing behavior is, I think, if we leverage our capacity to create that, is ingenious.
Yes,
right.
I agree.
I think it's brilliant.
To be clear, humanizing folks doesn't mean we don't hold them accountable.
Correct.
Right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
They still tried to murder people prior to this moment.
Yep.
So accountability still has to be there for that.
I don't know what that looks like, but there should be something.
So safety and accountability play a part in that. But yeah, the more able we are to move in and hear people and talk about things, the
better.
The better we're going to be able to collaborate. There are still people in this world I have zero interest in collaborating with.
Well, again, I think that people are hard to hate close up, move in is a guideline,
a good general rule of thumb.
But not the rule. So if someone's
wants to cause you physical or emotional harm,
then maybe not move in.
Don't move
maybe
in.
You should have some healthy boundaries there. But again, I think for those people that we just cast off without knowing, without understanding, it's better for us to move in, hold hands.
Yeah. Anything else you want to lift up in this episode? We've hit it. A lot happens.
Not at this time.
Great. We'll take a quick break, and we'll come back with our Tweet and Law moments, our devotion, and our gratitude. We will be right back. And welcome back from our little break.
Little break.
Let's talk about Twee and Law pushes and pulls
Yes.
us in and away from this episode.
Let's do it.
What pulls me away?
Pulls you in?
I would say pulls me away and pushes me in.
Ooh, interesting. We've changed.
Oh, well, I guess it doesn't matter. The thing I don't like is, man, it really sucks that shark had to break the ship, like, right after they finished doing it.
Kind of a jerk shark,
I was
right?
like, what a mean shark.
Yeah, I agree.
I believe it was the vibration of the
I believe
the
in a thing
ship.
called love.
The vibration was what led to the sand shark knowing where it was and then attacking
Oh, yeah,
it.
brilliant. Smart.
That's my thought process.
Yeah.
That's why in the movie Dune, they sand walk, where they glide so that it mimics the sand.
Uh-huh. Totally.
As opposed to stepping with rhythmic patterns that create vibrations.
Yeah, I still haven't done that.
Watch Dune or read Dune.
Yeah.
People really loved it.
I'm
I
sure.
was not one of them. I didn't dislike it. I was just like, this is fine. That was my response. I was like, okay.
Yeah,
That was fine.
I imagine the hype would be higher if I had read the series.
Well, so there's so many. There's like 50 books, but only like maybe 5 written by the original author, and the rest were written by family and stuff.
Interesting. Cool.
I don't know. That's a lot.
It's a lot. It's a big world. Lots to explore. Anyway, for me, I was unhappy with just like always the Earth Queen, just like all the time, every time, no matter what is coming out of her mouth.
What a real crumb yum.
And I just like, it's frustrating for me because we never really had a humanizing moment for the Earth Queen, right?
Or some like,
did we? I don't think we did.
no,
right?
It wasn't like, not that people are past humanity, because I don't think that's a thing. But she doesn't do a lot to.
Yeah.
She does a lot to distance herself from all of humanity, right? Like,
certainly does.
so
we see a lot of things we see a lot of dehumanizing behavior from the Earth Queen. And so I just am like that. I think that's why we're like, but that's problematic for me, is because I would like to have gotten something that lets me like, and I don't, it's not that I believe that like everybody has like a redeeming quality, but
some people do. But
I believe a lot of people do.
Not everyone deserves a redemption arc in the story being told, right?
And I don't need a redemption arc. I just want something that lets me, like, give me something that...
Oh, she's so old and bitter because her husband passed 30 years ago.
Give me a reason why she's this, like,
right.
bitter, right? Give me some sort of understanding. Anyway,
sometimes
I
it's
just...
Because she believes that she's better than everybody else.
And sure, but give me that, right?
They recently did a study where maybe it's not that recent. Have you seen the study where they let people play Monopoly?
Yes.
Right? And they let one person roll 2 dice.
Oh, this is a different study.
Yeah,
okay.
Roll 2 dice instead of 1.
Okay.
And every time they cross go, they get $200.
Yep.
And the person who only rolls 1 dice gets $100 still.
Mm-hmm.
So they get to move past go double the amount of times,
Yep.
and they get double the amount of money.
Yep.
But one of the things that they realized is that when interviewing them afterwards is that no one attributed their success to
Go money.
to the system that was in place.
Yep.
I was a better strategy. I used my money wisely. I put houses on popular places that I knew they would land. Like, no one ever attributed it to
That's fascinating.
I was given this advantage.
The study that I had regarding Monopoly that I was thinking
And so that
of,
made me think of the Earth Queen.
Well, one was it's a similar process, but they played Monopoly. But what happened was they had 4 people playing that were played for an hour,
Mm-hmm.
and then they let 2 more people get in after they had been playing for an hour.
Mm-hmm.
So gave them the same starting pay, the same everything, except what happened? All the properties were gone.
Mm-hmm.
And so what did they do? They just lost all their money because they couldn't get it back, right? And so it's a similar process to like, okay, well, everybody who's white's been in the United States for so long, and now all of a sudden we're going to let slaves free, and we're going to expect them to do just as well as... And no, we're not.
Right.
That's a terrible... Anyway, Earth Queen's the worst.
So that's what I'm saying. So there's a weird anomaly that pops up where when you have wealth and power, you for some reason have a difficult time attributing that success to not you.
Yeah.
And so sometimes maybe the Earth Queen has been in a place of that power for so long that I deserve to be this way.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So for me, that's what took me out of it. What brought me back in was
also problematic, the death of the Earth Queen.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Well, but it was less the death and more like, oh my goodness, this show is getting serious.
I think that was a moment to me where that scene was one of the very first times when watching.
Like my mouth dropped. I'm like,
I was like, they showed that.
Yeah.
They show her eyes going bloodshot, like
right?
And I was like, oh, we're in a different place from Aang being a giant koi, knocking someone into the ocean, and then just not really being sure if they survived or not. Like,
no, she's
dead.
No,
we know she's dead.
Yeah. Yeah, I love the tone of the show. I think that it rides a really interesting line of this is really serious and this is important that we like animated this so that you knew what was going on, so that you had context.
Super engaging moment.
Yeah, I mean, like I'm hooked, line, sinker.
I was like, oh,
I am
they
engaged.
Did this. Yeah.
So
when we see moments of this later in the season too, where I was like, oh, they showed that.
Yeah, right.
That was brutal.
Yes. So again, it's one of those things where I am from this point on, really till the end of the season, I am just eyes on the TV, no phone, like paying attention.
No, this section of season 3 is top tier television. And Devotion.
That's my tweet and law.
No, Devotion. Jumping into
the
Ingenuity through the element of air.
Air.
And I think for me, the thing that
poignant choice.
Yeah. The point that was a fun reminder, maybe not fun, but a nice reminder for me is I thought of the sailing that's taking place and the air needed to push the sand sailor through. But they had to build that sand sailor they couldn't create anything. They only could use what they had in front of them. And I think it is easy to beat ourselves up when we aren't able to create things or do things the way we want to do them, when we are trying to do them with resources we don't have. And so I think it's just a reminder and almost a permission to be like, do the best you can with what you got. Continue to learn, continue to grow, but do the best with what you got, and that's good enough. And I think that's a reminder I just want to be able to focus on this week.
That's such a good point. We can
you can
only do with what you know at the time and what you have at the time.
Exactly.
Right? That is the best that you can do.
They could escape. Mako and Bolin could not have escaped.
Yeah.
At least to the best of our knowledge right now. Right? So like you do the best with what you got, and that's okay. And I think that's my devotion for this week.
I love it. Yeah. Just kind of keeping that with you for this next week.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of cheating for mine because I mentioned this earlier, but we had our live episode for patrons today, and this lesson that one of our patrons is really sticking with me, which is this idea of it's getting a little meta into the animation of airbending, and this idea that the animators intentionally created a visual cue for seeing airbending, right? Because normally it would be invisible, right? You wouldn't be able to see.
Debris would be the only thing. Like
see a couple leaves,
the way
here
you
and
see
there,
kind of like a dust
or
cloud,
dust
like
sometimes. But in a clean room, you're not going to see anything.
And fun fact: when all those action movies you used to think of, when there's always dust on the two people fighting when they're like hand fighting, that's because they want you to be able to see.
It's the same deal,
the
right?
Impact,
this
right?
meta vision. I want the invisible to be visible. Mm-hmm. And this is a way of doing that, and it was an intentional step. And I'm really kind of caught on this because I think that's what we want. I think that's ingenious. We want to make the invisible visible to create a stimulus response.
Yep.
Right? And I want to make sure that, like, I want to think about what are the things that we can do that we can make more visible that will create and elicit more of a response from others. That's what we need for social justice. That's what we need for change, is how do we make the invisible visible? And so that's really sticking with me today, and that's what I'm thinking about in terms of this ingenuity. And I don't know what that looks like quite yet, but I I want that to stick with me for the next series of days as I think about this more and more. So big thanks to Rahul. Thank you for giving us this ammunition.
And a final reminder, join us on Patreon, live episodes every month, and we just have a good time and some little extra content. And
you too might get a shout out.
That's right. Gratitude.
Also, Maggie, you're the best.
Gratitude. Our patrons are great. We love them.
Yeah.
Gratitude. Who are we thankful for?
I think there's a lot of options in this episode, and for very different reasons. I think for me, I'm thinking about Korra a lot in this seemingly not ingenious play of like letting Asami do all of the work and all of the brain work and all of the but the support that she offers Asami is so integral, I think, to their relationship, and I really find it beautiful, and so I'm grateful for Korra today.
Nice.
Yeah. How about you?
It's interesting. This episode is so, honestly, I feel like iconic to Korra fans. And so I thought we would end up talking and have way more learning moments from that side of the story, and I feel like we are leaning so far into the other side, which is because my person is the captain.
Interesting.
And I think for me, I respect and like the idea of him putting morality first over orders.
Say more about that.
He gets to a point where it's right. It's the right thing to do to not bring the Avatar back.
Okay, I see.
It's the right thing to do for us to part ways.
Yeah.
And then let's go get a drink.
Yeah.
And so, but I really, it's so easy. Well, orders dictated this. But this is law. Well, it's not what's right, so
I'm not going to
do it. And that takes, I think, bravery and courage.
Here.
And risk. And so I
admire that.
I like that. Gratitude to the captain.
Yeah. And gratitude to whoever you're grateful for back at home. We are just really excited that you're listening to us still, or maybe this is your first episode. Who knows? But if it is your first episode, BNB_pod on all the things, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, less Avatar content on TikTok, but still good. We also
more Star Wars stuff, but it's been on hiatus for a little bit. We post there every now and then.
Yeah, we also have a Patreon, as we
do.
mentioned. Lots of tiers for you to choose from, but ultimately we're just aiming to pay the people that help this podcast earn a living wage for the time that they're spending. So we are not there, and we'd love for you to help us get us there.
That's right.
And if financial is not what you can do, you can always give us a review on wherever you're listening to podcasts. They have a review system. It makes a big difference for the algorithms to make sure that people are getting and finding this. So we just appreciate you no matter what.
Next 3 episodes we have are arguably the 3 highest rated Korra shows.
Woo!
That exist.
We also have 3 guests, assuming they all can stick with us for.
Yeah, well, we are hopeful.
Yeah, we are hopeful.
But yeah,
we have a great lineup coming up.
So next week, the ultimatum.
Dun dun
is
dun.
Which is some of probably the coolest fight scenes
ever.
In this and Atla, I think.
Yeah,
from a series.
Well, we already know that Korra outshines
actions and action choreography. Y'all. I'm Sunshine Mayfield.
I'm Ben Pruitt.
And this has been Bending Not Breaking. Thank you for listening.